What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the Alto again, and this time we are here with Tony of the almighty Sonata Arctica. It is so great to be able to have you here. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime, man. It's so awesome to have you here. Thank you for giving us another fantastic Sonata Arctica album to add to the catalog. We got Clear Cold Beyond coming out very soon. Was this just intended to be sort of like a continuation to your previous album, Talveo, if I pronounced that correctly? Or is this meant to be kind of like a new beginning and like a clean slate for Sonata Arctica?
A new beginning is the best word, probably, or getting back to the roots for real this time, actually. And I think this album compares really well with the first 3 or 4 albums that we released. It's same family, anyways, and I think that's it. Restarting, rebirth of Sonata Arctica in a way.
So maybe if people were into like Silence or Winter Hearts Guild and whatnot, is that like kind of like a Reckoning Night? Does it kind of continue in that sort of vein in a way? Or being that you did learn a lot of, I felt like with the Days of Grace or Pariah's Child, for example, I feel like that you learned a lot of new tricks and twists as well. So is it almost kind of like a combination of the old and more recent?
Yeah, of course, this album, I think it's like a combining everything we've done in the past, but the emphasis is very much on the power metal side of things, and we have a lot of really speedy songs on the album, and it sounds like the early Sonata Arctica.
Yeah.
Not too many soft songs there.
Oh, well, for a lot of heavy metalheads, that's a relief. But I think that's what I've always admired about Sonata Arctica, that whether you guys go slow or whether you guys go pedal to the metal, it still sounds very powerful at the end. I think like with the whole power metal thing, I think what makes almost a power metal band is when the ballads don't lack in the heaviness and the ballads feel just as powerful as like, the very fast songs.
Yeah, power balance. That's the thing. Yeah.
So for people who haven't heard this album, do you feel like the first singles that we heard so far, such as First in Line or A Monster Only You Can't See or Dark Empath, is maybe a good representation of this whole album? Or is there still a lot more tricks to be discovered on the other songs?
Well, there is one slow song, actually, the last one on the album, Clear Cold Beyond, which is, I would almost call that a ballad in a way, but it's a beautiful, beautiful song. And but I think the first 3 singles represent the album very well, and that's why they were chosen, actually. And definitely, after we had been speaking about us going back to power metal, there was no other option than having a song like First in Line, a power metal song, as the first single to get it started. And a lot of people were suspicious about the whole thing, that this is probably the only power metal song they have on the album, but no, that's not the case at all, and there will be more. And as you can hear, even a song like A Monster Only You Can't See sounds like the older Sonata Arctica power metal-esque song, so it all works really well. And there are quite a few of these First in Line type songs there, and it's not even the fastest track on the album.
What I'm curious to what inspired California, because I think every genre of music in general has wrote a song about that. I've never heard a power metal band from Finland though. I guess Santa Cruz is probably the closest thing to it, but
Yeah.
I'm just curious to what inspired California.
This song has very little to do with California per se, but it's like a human relationship thing, where a person is very much interested in you, but it's not for the right reason, and he or she is just using you to get to someone else, and you realize that. And basically, in this case, I'm using California falls into the sea, which is the phrase that's repeated there a lot on that song, and probably something that everybody will hook onto and only understand and hear, but wrong, because I'm using it in this case the same way one would say that when the cows fly. That will never happen, because and I hope this is correct, but I had some science news flash thingy coming to me and saying that California, like on some science fiction movies, it actually cannot slide into the sea just like that, no matter what happens, because the continental plates are moving in the wrong direction for that to happen. So there will be, cracks and such things, but that will never happen. And I do hope that this is correct.
I hope so too.
Because
I hope so too.
So California Falls into the Sea is basically the same thing as When the Cows Fly, because you never know, cows might fly, but I hope not.
Okay, because and I think it's a fantastic song, and I love that meaning. I didn't know that that was the case, and I think that adds a lot of meaning. But like I heard one people said, "Oh my God, is Sonata Arctica turning into the Red Hot Chili Peppers or something like that?"
No, but definitely that's the same kind of thing as what we had on our third album, We're on Scale, with Victoria's Secret. It's something that gets your attention. Like, oh, Victoria's Secret, what's that about?
Yeah. Well, that's
California, yeah.
That's a genius. That's a genius like plan. Actually, that's like a really good idea, because I've seen like a lot of like more pop oriented or like, you know, a rather shallow aspect of society using, like, for instance, Trojan. We all know it's a condom brand, but the Trojan horse in mythology, there's a lot more deeper meaning behind that. So
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the fact that that was the first thing I could think of off the top of my head. But you also referenced the term power metal. And I had a conversation with Gus G about this yesterday, and I'm just wondering what exactly makes a power metal band a power metal band? Because I've interviewed, you know, now I got to interview you guys, but I also interviewed, you know, Blind Guardian and Twilight Force and a lot of bands that fall into that category. I see a lot of similarities between a band like you guys and Iron Maiden or Judas Priest, for example, but nobody's ever calling them power metal. But I do see the same sort of anthemic, powerful inspiration into it. Is power metal really something, like, is there an element that makes a power metal band a power metal band?
Yeah, this is why what you said there is the reason that I hadn't really considered us a power metal band. And I've been sort of fighting against it for a long, long time, but it's redundant because music needs labels for some reason. It's a marketing tool and such. So I've slowly grown to accept it. I try to use like melodic metal and such brands, you know, that people would rather use than power metal, because there are power metal bands that are actually power metal bands, like Dragon Force, for example. They're like extreme power metal. But in one of the interviews I did earlier, someone introduced the idea that there are like sub-genres to power metal as well. Dragon Force is extreme power metal, their own labeling for it, and we are something totally different. I don't know, more emotional, softer side of power metal, but it's definitely, power metal is part of our thing. And we have songs that are power metal. So we are just very versatile and flirting with many different genres of music. You know, if you take our first album, it only has a few power metal songs, and then songs like Full Moon, for example, which is, I don't know, it's rock or whatever. Iron Maiden is kind of stuff. So
yeah, well, it's funny too, because I feel like power metal has sort of taken a sort of similar approach to how, like, there used to be just black metal, but now there's progressive black metal, there's melodic black metal, there's blackened death metal, there's blackened metalcore now at this point. You know, with death metal, there was just death metal, and then it's melodic death metal, technical death metal, and all this. So I feel like power metal has sort of taken the same approach, where it's, you know, there's progressive elements in power metal, there's, you know, there's death elements in power metal. So I feel like power metal has sort of went off to form its own line of subgenres.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a very good thing that every new generation sort of makes the music their own, comes up with new things, and eventually a completely new genre of music might just arrive because of that. Because basically, it all started with blues and rock and such things, and whatever arrived even before those, and then all these music styles that are in a wider genre of rock are from that core originally. Black metal would not exist without those bands and those artists, early 50s and such.
Definitely.
And or maybe they would, but still, currently one has to think that they are all have grown from the same seed in a way.
Well, I mean, everything is connected in that regard. It's just because when I hear, like, I have an idea of what death metal sounds like, because whether I'm listening to Cannibal Corpse or Deicide or Morbid Angel, Obituary, it's death metal. I have an idea of what metalcore sounds like with whether I listen to Killswitch Engage or Asking Alexandria or something like that. But when I hear power metal, it seems like it's just a noun. Like, I think you guys are very powerful, but I also think At the Gates is very powerful. I think Guns N' Roses is very powerful, but I would never like use that word in their genre in a way.
Yeah, I think, power metal, one thing that in a way I think defines power metal is like the structures of the songs. They are usually more traditional in a way that you have an intro that is usually somehow derived from the chorus line, so it already introduces the main theme of the whole thing, the punchline, and then you have a verse, a pre-chorus, chorus, and then you start repeating and maybe introduce some new bit here and there and have a lot of solos and speed. And it's like traditional form of music. You have you can manage with 3 elements, or 2 actually even. You have a verse and a chorus, and you can play around with those, make different tiny alterations, and you have a song. And basically that's like a pop music formula. And we are just playing around with it in a way.
And
it sounds harsh, but that's how I see it anyways. And a lot of these more extreme bands, their structures are more somehow free in a way. Like they are not bound into this thing that, and now we are actually getting closer to the chorus and now sing along. Yeah. It's not a thing. It's the point of that music style is something totally different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the technical proficiency and also the lyrical subject matter, I think like power metal has been able to dabble into a lot of elements of fantasy and the metaphysical and whatnot.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to bring that into, I wanted to talk more about the songwriting process, because over the years, like, has music always needed to be present in order for you to come up with lyrics, or has maybe a concept or a lyrical idea maybe helped guided the sound of the music itself?
Well, California Falls into the Sea is a line, just a lyrical line that I came up with. And of course, it's been around there. It's not like super original thing, but anyway, that's how the whole thing started. And I started writing lyrical things around it, and the melodies and the complete song came later. But then usually, anyways, I always start with music. I might have tiny lyrical bit like California Falls into the Sea, and I start writing the song around it, and not even knowing if that original idea, the lyrical thing, might even be there when the song is ready. I might have to ditch it because I might not be able to write the song, the lyrics and everything around that original idea. But in this case, California sticked, and I was able to work around it and make it work. Yeah.
Forgive my neighbor's dogs for barking in
no
this
worries.
apartment. But
I love dogs. So.
Hey, you want to love these ones, trust me.
Neighbors' dogs are different. If you have your own, that's a different deal.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But because I've always thought that even just with your album titles alone, like The Ninth Hour, for example, that I thought was a very thought-provoking, or like Pariah's Child. What would the child of a pariah exactly be like? And then with like songs like Unia or Talveo, which I don't personally know what those words mean, I thought like the titles in itself are very thought-provoking. I look at a Sonata Arctica album, like when I look at your album titles, it captivates me the same way when I see the title of a book. What does that title mean in a way? So I was just always wondering if maybe with Sonata Arctica, do you approach lyrics from a more personal place, or is it more of an escapism where you're not bringing too much of your own personal life into it?
I think most songs have something, not all of them, but most. I might put tiny diary moments here and there, certain words or tiny clips that nobody can really connect to anything except for me. Some things might remind me of certain moment or a person or whatever, and that's how it is. All songs are of course personal, some more so than others. But definitely these are not my diary markings. I would be quite an awful person if these were my personal experiences like Dark Empath, for example. And it would be a nightmare to be at the receiving end of such a treatment as well. But hey, unia means dreams in Finnish,
Okay.
and talviyö is simply winter night.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
you learned.
I appreciate that. I've interviewed, I think, over hundreds of Finnish bands right now, and I still can't like really speak a word of Finnish, and I think it has to do with the fact. Well, I think it has to do with the fact that all of you speak better English than most people here do. So.
Well, thanks, I suppose.
Fair enough. But when I see the constant evolution from Ecliptica to now, does the making of a Sonata Arctica album always start off with a vision in a way, or is it a very experimental process?
Choosing from those two, experimental would be the word. I just, start writing songs and see what comes. Although, with this Clear Cold Beyond, as we were aiming to have a restart and like a clear direction that we are going back to power metal. So I was obviously trying to achieve that with every song that I was writing. So I was writing, and I had to ditch a lot of material because it was not really meant for this album. Mm-hmm. But this was a very easy album to write in that sense anyways, that I had a direction and I wasn't allowing myself to go just creatively crazy and do whatever comes into my mind. Maybe with some songs, yeah, but generally speaking, I was trying to stay within the very loose box of Sonata Arctica, power metal-esque thing.
Well, with having 11 albums now, some people would think that, when you're in your 11th album, writing a new album and, getting into the songwriting mode, you have a formula, you've been in the game long enough where you kind of are able to go into it? Or is it harder to create a new album this later because you've expressed so many different ideas and you've changed so much as a person that it gets even harder with the making of each album rather than easier?
Well, learning is one thing that you learn with every album something new, and you might introduce some new working methods instead of having a huge piano thing where you're writing. Take a tiny keyboard and see what you might find from there. It all helps, creatively, and learning some fundamentally different instrument besides that your whatever it is that is your main instrument. Like I'm mostly keyboard player, but I can doodle around with the guitar enough to write songs with it. So that makes things easier. Excuse me.
So when it comes to getting the inspiration for lyrics or any sort of musical ideas, do you almost kind of like need to put yourself in a specific place? Do you almost kind of look for inspiration in a way, or does it just kind of strike you?
Sometimes you have to force it. Sometimes it's very easy. Like when it comes to lyrics, in this case, I wrote vast majority of the lyrics while we were touring in Latin America last year. So sitting by the pool under a palm tree with a drink, and writing power metal songs for a band that has a name like Sonata Arctica. So it's a weird environment, and I've never really worked that way in while we are touring actually. But we have a lot of free time. And that tour actually happened while we were already recording. We were in the studio and just had to go out on a tour because this was one of those tours that was supposed to happen in 2020 already, and it was postponed again and again and again. And finally we got to do it, but it was the only spot was when we were actually in studio already. So I had to write the lyrics while we were on the road, so I would have something to sing when we come back home. So it varies the way you work and where you get the inspiration. But this time, although you might not understand it or get it when you are reading the lyrics and listening to the songs, but most of these songs have been written in a very, very, very not Arctic environment.
Which I think is awesome. I love it when a band sounds like they're from a specific area. Like, for instance, I had no idea Santa Cruz was from Finland. I thought that they were from California or Miami or somewhere like that. So I always found it very fascinating. And look, there's a lot of like melodic death metal bands from here in New York, like Dead City Crown and Solemn Vision. Like, you would listen to these bands and think that they are from Finland or Sweden. Nope, they're from the cities of New York and New Jersey. So I always just found that quite fascinating.
That's fantastic. Music styles, they're not so much bound into one country or region anymore. You can do just about anything, anywhere.
Yeah.
It's a matter of getting into it.
Yeah, definitely. Depending on what the music can be about, though, and its lyrical subject matter, does it maybe feel differently to you? Do you channel a different energy or a different emotion into it, or is lyric writing just lyric writing, and there's a specific method behind the madness that applies to everything?
Writing the lyrics is the most demanding and difficult part of my work. Really, it takes the most out of me. The music comes easy, but lyrics I always seem to struggle with getting the idea. And I've been thinking that maybe I would allow someone else to write the lyrics, but I'm super jealous, and I sort of have an idea when I write the song that what this song is going to be about. And when I write the lyrics, I might actually be stuck with the song for many years before it gets lyrics and is actually recorded. So the melody lines and everything, they are very super solid, and hence the lyrics have to be written on the melody instead of just free form writing nice poems or such. They need to be certain length words here and there. And as I am a Finnish guy, I have certain limitations when it comes to pronouncing some things. And as a singer, you have to be careful what kind of lasts like vowels you put at the end of a word when you have to go super high, because some of the like E, I find at least more difficult to sing than ah when you're going really high. Wow. There are stupid things that sort of affect the choice of the words that you can actually put in the song, at least for me. I cannot be the only one.
No.
And it's also, I think it's also very smart when you know your limitations and what actually works for you. So you don't necessarily write yourself in a place that you can't perform those songs anymore.
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, I feel like accents go away when people are singing, which I think is awesome. Like Tim Ripper Owens has the voice of what you would hear in like a Swedish or Finnish power metal band. Little do you know, he's an American, and like I just think that that's just so unique in a way that almost seems like when singing is involved, the accent or the language barrier kind of just disappears.
Yeah, it's much easier. And also, when you are doing the same lines again and again and again and again while you're rehearsing and recording and then singing them live, it also gets easier. You don't have to think at the same time and come up with whatever it is that you're going to say. And the more you use the language, the more you learn and get better at it. I've been giving quite a few interviews lately, obviously, and the beginning was super hard. I had to sort of relearn speaking English again, because I do not get to use it that much in my everyday life here. I hear it a lot, but I didn't get to speak. So when Finnish language is so fundamentally different, your tongue gets a little bit, stuck in the Finnish language. And then when you need to be flexible with the English and such other languages, it's very difficult sometimes in the beginning, but you'll get around it eventually.
I always laugh whenever I'm interviewing a Scandinavian band, and before we start recording, they go, "Just a heads up, my English isn't very good," and then they do the interview and they sound like a novelist from England. So I never believe it anymore. But and I have a few more questions for you. One pertaining really to the live presence. First off, we'll get this sort of silly question out of the way. But 11 albums deep now, it's got to get harder and harder to put a set list together playing live, right? Because I always want to hear stuff off of the Days of Grace, and then Reckoning Night, and then maybe Pariah's Child. Like, it just seems like that it gets much harder every time.
Absolutely, yeah, it does. And when you are playing roughly like 90 minutes, like a normal show, what we are doing, it's very hard to have more than one song from each album anymore. Or if you are planning to play like 4 or 5 songs from Clear Cold Beyond, that takes like a huge amount of space from the set list. So it's you just need to sort of forget your own babies and darlings and play the songs that people most likely would love to hear. Yeah. Like Don't Say a Word, Full Moon, Replica, and such. I have a right. Songs that have the audience.
Well, when you play like an older song live, if you play stuff off of Ecliptica or Silence or Winter Hearts Guild, like does it almost feel like you're going back in time when you sing those? Like when you play Ecliptica, are you literally, just gonna get so much cheesiness for this, but are you literally partying like it's 1999 when you're playing when you're playing an Ecliptica song live? Does it feel like that, or as you've grown so much and a lot has happened in that amount of time, it almost feels like the songs develop new meaning when you perform newer material live?
So many of those early songs have actually found new meaning, and because there is always a lot of ways you can understand the lyrical content of the song. And when you age 20 years, your life can be drastically different, and whatever you've experienced might very much affect the way you understand something that you've written yourself. And some of the songs have a completely different meaning nowadays than what they had when I was younger. And also, it allows me to understand why some songs were so popular among fans, and how they could probably see it very much differently already back then, and I was unable to do that. Singing these old Ecliptica songs, I think the most wonderful thing is when you see younger people singing along and see that these songs that are a lot older than they are have found their way into their musical taste and life.
Well, that's what I've always said, that like a band's catalog is the perfect example on how time is relative in a way. Like I was 6 years old when the first Sonata Arctica album came out, so sorry to make you feel old, but so I was a total late bloomer. Like the first time I really heard Sonata Arctica, like that I got into, was like in 2012. Like I believe Stone's "Grow Her Name" was the first Sonata Arctica album I discovered. But then I would go and listen to the back catalog. So Ecliptica doesn't take me back to 1999. It takes me back to 2012, 2013. It takes me back to that sort of time period in a way, because that's when I discovered you. So I think that that's one of the most fascinating things about like how everybody has their own meaning behind it in terms of how they also and when they discovered it.
Yeah, and when you've been touring for 20 years or more, you are slowly becoming nostalgia for a lot of people. There are people who were young, of that special age where you make your best memories of your young life, and these songs have been the soundtrack of your life at that point. And now when you are 40 something, you might, it gives you certain chills and takes you back in time also when you come and see the show and the band is playing those songs that you first heard when they were fresh. And it was the best thing ever, and it's amazing.
Yeah. Just in another 20 years, people are going to look at Clear Cold Beyond the same way that we look at Ecliptica. Just remember that.
Yeah.
And the final question I wanted to ask you, because when I saw you, I only saw you guys play live once. It was on the tour you did in North America with Camelot and Battle Beast in 2019. Fantastic time.
Yeah.
But it was such a magnificent experience to witness just how your voice echoed across that entire room, and how you really brought in a new reality, I would say, with your live presence. Is there a similar energy that's channeled into your live presence as songwriting, or is playing live and songwriting almost two completely separate arts and two separate things altogether?
I think there are separate elements of me, basically. Like I mentioned earlier, I do have to think about my life persona, the Tony that is actually singing and performing these songs live later when I'm writing. But the creation of art, it's and performing it, for me, they are two very different animals, and thankfully so, because it gives me a breather. I love writing songs, but I do love playing shows as well. And it sort of gives me a breather from the other side. I can divide my life professionally into different moments. There's like songwriting and creation mode, which is wonderful and gives you a certain level of freedom, and then the touring part where you are presenting all this new stuff to your fans.
Well, so this is sort of like the brain picking question in a way, because in the end, you are taking the songs that you wrote and you're replicating, pun intended, replicating the song in a live setting. So, is there anything creative about playing live? Is there something creative about it, or is it more of just an exercise and sort of like a routine in a way where there is sort of like a structure that applies to every show that you play?
There are creative moments. There are certain songs that give you more freedom to sort of play around and interact with fans, with the audience and everything. And of course, I tend to act around when I'm singing and then play the songs, or so as a actor kind of thing there, and sort of trying to reach the emotions of the song, and also sort of give the same emotions and show them to the audience and see how they react and see them react. It's a wonderful thing, and yeah, it's confusing how blessed I feel in a way that I'm able to do something like this for a living. Yeah. Still after 20 odd years, and sort of restarting the whole thing and going back to new, and all the people who have actually heard the album think that we actually are now going back to the roots and then getting a new start for Sonata Arctica, and not 1 minute too early.
Yeah, and of course, and not 1 minute too late too. Like it's great when you have the fans constantly follow you for all these years, but then when you see the younger fans come to the shows, it's just a true blessing.
It's fantastic. See, at best, like 3 generations of people. You have a person you've seen early on your career come into the show with their parents, and now you are seeing like 3 generations having a tiny toddler there. Yeah. It's amazing.
Like to quote the AC/DC documentary, first it was hide your daughters, now it's hide your mothers.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that's a cool one. Yeah.
So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Most of all, though, thank you for continuing to give us amazing new music just with this new album, Clear Cold Beyond. Absolutely beautiful. Just anything else with Sonata Arctica that you would like to promote for this upcoming record cycle, if you're allowed to say at this very moment, of course.
Well, make a lot of records and listen to the album and find the right people, make a lot of noise, because we do want to come and play in North America once again. It's getting increasingly difficult, unfortunately, because of the financial bits, bus and everything and fuel and everything is getting just way too expensive for a tiny band to make work somehow. It's like paid. It's like vacation we are paying for basically when we come there. So it's like, come and see the shows and keep live music alive. And while we are still waiting our chance to come back there, go and see the bands in your town, your favorite club. Keep that club alive, because when you buy tickets and merchandise from touring bands, you are definitely keeping live music alive, and hopefully you can also go and see live shows of your favorite bands in that same club with your own kids one day.
Definitely. It's so, thank you for saying that, especially, and shout out to all the local and underground bands that are also keeping it alive as well. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Everybody, we are here with Sonata Arctica, Clear Cold Beyond. Be sure to pick that up. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.